Today, we are mastering sales infiltration, unlocking career changing strategies. Welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast, hosted by Denise Griffitts and Ben Gay III. This week, we're delving into the crucial sales infiltration chapter, and that begins on page 257 of the Closers Part 1. We're going to start focusing on page 258, 259, and work our way from there. And this promises a career changing breakthrough, particularly on page 259. Ben considers this the most vital chapter in the book. In fact, he considers it the most important chapter he's ever written. And he urges sales professionals to revisit it frequently. And given its complexity and just the massive amount of information that he is here to share with you, we're breaking down this chapter into a multi part series, a masterclass, if you will. Our aim is to unpack advanced sales infiltration strategies and offer listeners actionable insights that will help elevate their sales approach. And we're going to explore the nuanced techniques that distinguish exceptional salespeople from, just getting by salespeople. Nobody wants to just get by. We want to be great. So last week, and I have to tell you this, we touched on the what's in it for me, WIIFM principle. And I also published my weekly LinkedIn newsletter this morning, diving deeper into that idea. I talk about how connection requests that are just thinly veiled attempts to pick my brain, and they happen and they fall flat. And it's a reminder that this principle applies to pretty much every interaction we have, both personally and professionally. And if Ben has taught me nothing else, and Lord knows he tries, he has taught me that people want to know, how will this benefit me? Why should I care? What problem does this solve for me? How will this make my life easier, better, or more fulfilling? Ben, it's Wednesday. Let's go.
How you doing?
Having trouble with Zoom, but yeah, that's been an all week thing. So other than that, it's all well.
Your guidance to where we were going to start today when we get into the book, you said part one. It's part two, page
I'm sorry.
259. That's all right.
So it's not
But,
a Zoom issue, it's a Denise issue. Thank
well,
you
it's
for
it's
reminding me.
it's both.
I don't love you no more. All right, keep going. I'm sorry. And I know better. The book is sitting in front of me in its pieces. I need to keep taping it back together. I have opened this thing so many times. But
I,
anyway,
fa-
you said
I
you had
found a
some go ahead. You had some questions too. Go ahead.
yeah. I found a rubber band works best. The books I have that I'm into constantly, several of them have big, thick rubber bands around them just to keep the pages in place, which is the condition that the first copy of the closers I ever encountered before it got rewritten and revised was in. All the pages shot all over my office when I opened the package and flipped through the pages. So I put a rubber band around it to put them back together. I didn't realize that I was soon going to have lots of books with rubber bands around them. They don't make the bindings like they used to, I guess. Yeah, I've got a few questions that came in during the week that I thought were worthy of running by us. One from Ray Webb is who I haven't heard from in years. Uh, Ray Webb said, you keep talking about expanding the closer series. How does one participate in that? Well, if you're really good at a subject, has to do with sales, marketing, self-improvement, you tell me. The closers, we're up to the closers part, committed and written up to the closers part 7. The closers part 4, one of my favorite subject matters, is going to be, and I think it's almost totally written now by Denise Griffitts, is on podcasting and all things internet. And
Podcasting, in my opinion, I'm going to say it loud and proud. In my opinion, podcasting is marketing 101. You get your
yes,
voice heard, you reach an incredible number of people. Okay, keep going, Ben.
well,
Thank you.
that's absolutely right. So anyway, back to Ray's question, uh, the proposed authors are the ones who come to me with those ideas. Closers Part 5, for instance, hits by Mark Tassani, I'm sorry, a senior moment by Mark Tassani hits on real estate. Part 7, which is being finished up right now by Randy Chaffee and Wes Wyatt, is about trade shows and exhibits and conventions and so on, why you should be there and how to work them once you get there, etc. And those people came up with their own ideas. So part of it is on you, Ray. The other thing is I am actively looking for 2 closers books authors. One author isn't the right word. One would be an anthology where you get the book. You can charge people to be in it if you want. I don't get any of that money, but you get individual authors to write their chapter, not unlike Chicken Soup for the Soul, but the subject would be on successful selling, sales experiences they had, or great moments in their sales career, or things that turned it all around. That would be up to them, but probably 10, 12, 15 at the most individual chapters written by other people. I don't have the time to put it together, but I know it would be very successful because you not only have yourself promoting the book when done, and me, and all the other authors in the other chapters, you have all the people in the book itself who each will consider it their book. That's among the reasons anthologies, although some are questionable in quality, sell well because you got 15 people who each buy some and go promote it and so on. So it could be, that's the anthology thing. And then the next one I'm looking for is a closer's quote book, success quotes, uh, things that inspired you in not just the standard you become what you think about stuff, but things that would inspire a salesperson or remind a salesperson what they should be doing, get them back on track. So I would call it a closer's quote book with emphasis
One.
towards sales, success,
Right.
marketing, whatever.
Well,
And
if you decide to make that one kind of a bunch of us contributing our quotes,
sure.
listen, I talk with, as you know, I talk with people every week outside of you, twice a week. I do 3 of these podcasts each week. And outside of you, I'm talking with people all over the globe. And I'll tell somebody right in the middle of the show, can I use that on my book? And I
Mhm.
start scribbling them on my whiteboard because they're just brilliant. One of my favorites, and I'm looking up at it right now, this lady, and I can't remember what the conversation off the top of my head was all about, but she said, does this solve for that? And I went, whoa, 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 say that again. Does this solve for that? I thought that was one of the most brilliant one-liners I had heard in a long time.
True. And a little thing can, a quote in a book, let's say that's not about quotes, but somewhere in a book. I don't think I've ever read a book that somewhere in it I didn't find a sentence that made it all worthwhile. The example I use most frequently is Jimmy Carter, and I know he just passed away, so I'll be kind. But Jimmy Carter, we're both from Georgia, so I've been familiar with Carter since before he was governor. Um, and somebody sent me, I can't believe I bought it, but somebody sent me his autobiography, I guess it was. And I reluctantly, because I've read just about everything I get my hands on about presidents, because it takes you behind the scenes. I was flipping through it and got to a sentence. He was sitting in the Plains Baptist Church, and the minister said, if you were arrested today and charged with being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? And I thought, whoa, is that a great way to phrase something? Christianity aside, it's just a great way to phrase a question. So I've
Right.
changed it over the years to if you were arrested today and charged with being a great salesperson, or successful or whatever, would there be enough evidence to convict you? My point being, I read the whole Carter book, and that's the one sentence I got out of it, and it was worthwhile to get it. And I've been quoting it for 40 years. So you know, the sales, you could write something in a quote book or in an anthology that could literally change people's lives. And we'll get to one of those in a minute, where a customer communicated with me uh, about how his life was changed 34 years ago when he read a section in the Closers Part 1. And he said, I just been meaning to thank you. 34 years he's been meaning to thank me, but fortunately finally got around to it, and I'm happy with that. Then Pat Hall, a friend, personal friend, business friend, said, I've heard you refer to the Closers distributor program. How does that work? It's pretty simple, Pat. If you've read a book from the Closers series, um, and can attest to its value to you, then, and you personally bought it, you're in our records, just a single copy, then you are a distributor for that book or books. If you want, you get 50% off when you order 5 books at a time per order, or more, of course. And you can run that discount up higher. Look in the back of your closer's book and you'll see discounts going up to, I think it's 55% or something, if you order in huge quantities. But at just 5 books, you can buy them. And the point of that is either for your sales organization or to have a little side hustle, resell them. My little side hustle, I've sold 10.5 million copies of the Closers Part 1. I don't keep track of all the others, although I guess I could. But the Closers Part 1, we've been counting for many years. 10.5 million copies when we quit counting 30 some odd years ago. So as a little side hustle, it can do extremely well if you promote it. If you just stack them up in your bedroom and look at them for the rest of your life, don't bother. But yes, there is a distributor program. And I think realistically, I'm willing to ship anywhere you're willing to pay the shipping. But I think realistically, that would be a United States program where we can send the books to you quickly and efficiently without having your profits eaten up with shipping to Guatemala or Great Britain or whatever.
Canada,
So
try sending something over there. I needed to send some, I wanted to send something to one of my clients, and I called her. I said, can I just tell you how much I appreciate you instead? And she started laughing. She said, you don't want to pay shipping, do you? I said, no, I don't. I just, I really don't.
it can get a little touchy. And there are some countries where I think you should get a job at the Postal Service because you get to pick and choose what you want from the shipments. We don't, for instance, ship to Mexico.
Right.
We ship to a mail forward. If you have a mail forwarding service in the United States, then I don't care. You can be anywhere in the world because that's between you and your mail forwarding service. But I'm not shipping to Guatemala when I'm not shipping to Mexico. The loss rate is just way too high. They're either not good at keeping track of things or they're very good at keeping track of things. I haven't decided which one. So anyway, to Ray, anthologies I'm looking for, uh, and a quote book. And by the way, I started one years ago and it's still on my computer. So I've got 50, 60 good quotes that I'll give you as a starter point if you're picked for that project. And then Pat Hall now knows we
Me,
have
my
a
hands up. Pick me, pick me. You made me pick you for my podcast. You owe me. So, seriously, I'd like to know more about it. And we're talking about part 4, which is me, Denise Griffitts,
That's
and
right.
7, which I think is Randy Chaffee and Wes
7,
Wyatt.
right?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, we've got this little foot race going on in LinkedIn. It's like, where are you with yours? I'm almost done. Well, where are you with yours? We're going to see who publishes first.
I was talking to them the other day about a different project Oh no, it was a podcast that I was doing for them.
Yeah, you're doing one on Friday, I think.
Yeah, and anyway, somewhere in the conversation, they said, "How?" Very casually, "How's Denise coming with her book?" And I said, "Why do you ask?" "Because we want to beat her."
I know. And when he contacts me, he's being so slick about it. It's like, oh, just want to know how you're doing. I'm like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah, you think
I've
I'm
been
stupid?
married. I'm not doing that ever again, but I've been married. I know that I know what you're doing. Stop it. So, but, yeah, he thinks he's gonna beat me. That ain't happening, Randy. Love you, but it ain't happening.
Well, they're very curious where you are in the process. I thought it was sort of cute. They're the ones, you and them are the ones that cause me to issue numbers for the various books as the book is ready instead of the commitment is made ready. So I don't know what number the anthology will be or the sales success quote book will be. That's determined by who we pick and how fast they get it done. Another question.
I want to
This
talk
from
with
an
you about both of those because I have ideas. I always have ideas. We'll
uh,
talk again.
all right. Another question from Rob, pardon me, Bob Ronner, an old friend I haven't seen or talked to in over 30 years. I guess we're gathering up people listening that I'm not aware of. Um, but he said, would you touch on the closing machine you had again? He's referring to the DC-6 that we use to fly distributors around the country. And then at the bottom of the question, he said, because I was one of the victims. And he meant that lovingly. The DC-6 program we had, we bought a the airplane that the Chicago White Sox had. It was their team airplane. It was a DC-6B, and I just remember that because I had to put gas in it all the time or approve bills or so on. So what it was stuck in my mind. What it was, that's a picture of commercial jet airliner, but with prop airplanes. It was sort of the end of the prop commercial era. Good looking airplane. It sat 42 people first class, no coach, no business class, 42 people in luxury. And it had a private cabin that would seat loosely four people, bunched up a little bit, six people. And the person who sat and here's what we used it for, to fly people to the home office, Holiday Magic Cosmetics in San Rafael, California, to fly them in to the Marin County Airport in the DC-6B. And the ticket to get on was somebody had to invite you, somebody local in your area, let's say Atlanta, had to invite you to be on. And the ticket was a cashier's check made out to yourself for either 25, I'll give you the figures then, either 2,500 or 5,000. Today, that would be 25,000 or 50,000 with inflation built in. So even though it may not sound like much now, 2,500 or 5,000 then was serious money. And the purpose was you didn't have to give it to us. That was the price to join at the top two levels in Holiday Magic. But you had to show you had the ability to invest if after the trip you felt that was a good idea. So as you came up the steps, your local vice president, whoever it was in Atlanta at that time or Chicago at that time or whatever, greeted you. And if you showed him a check, cashier's check or what's the other one? Cashier's check, certified check, cashier's check or certified check made out to yourself. So we weren't going to grab it from you. You just had to endorse it if you want to join us. That puts you on the plane, you and or your wife or husband, as the case may be, if you were two of you were there. So that gave us 42 minus a few couples spread in there, 42 buying units, each of whom, talking today's money, had either 25,000 or $50,000 on them. We then flew them to California from wherever they were, first class. We had 4 cabin attendants. We called them stewardesses in those days. 4 good-looking stewardesses on board every flight, and they catered to your every need, drink, food, whatever. You almost couldn't ask for something they couldn't produce. And if you had things you wanted to discuss with your local vice president, you went into the cabin and met with him or her. Many more met with them on the way back than did on the way out, but whatever. And then we flew you to the home office and gave you a tour of the office itself. Maybe took you up to William Penpatrick's home if it was convenient for them at the time, or my home, and gave you a tour of each place. The point being, if you do well, you too can live like this. Took them out to the airport, Noss Field, the Marin County Airport, where we owned a Cessna dealership and kept the majority of 42 some odd airplanes we owned, mainly for the flight school, but we also had the only flying B-29 in the world. We had a Ford Trimotor, show you the age of it when you went inside. It had wicker seats. I looked at them the first time. I thought, we're going to go flying in wicker seats. What
Nobody
if,
wears shorts.
yeah,
Wear
and
long pants.
and what if we hit something? And we had an F-86 fighter jet and all sorts of fascinating things. So you saw all that, and then you were taken down to Sausalito and allowed to wander around on the Principia, or 100 and I forget what it was, 130, 140-foot yacht, and see that side of life and so on. By the time you finished basically, I think it was 2 days of cruising around looking at things you've always dreamed of, you got back on the plane and we flew you back home. Some had already turned in their checks at that point. Others, it was time to go to the cabin and meet with your vice president. We also had a vice president assigned just to the plane. That was his total job. Chuck Childress was his name. And one day my secretary came to me and said, I don't think what you did to Chuck is fair. And I said, what did I do? She said, well, you told him to get his ass on that plane and not get off. And I said, okay. And she said, it's been 30 days and he's afraid to get off of the plane. I said, no, I meant get on it when it's flying with the distributor. She said, well, you didn't make that clear. His wife has been bringing changes of clothes out to
Oh
the
my
airport.
God.
So,
You scared him.
yeah. So, Chuck, if you're listening to this, I apologize again. All I meant was you're assigned to the airplane. But the punchline to that, because Bob said you've always referred to the DC-6 as a closing machine. I couldn't, I couldn't swear to this, but we brought the DC-6 in probably 3 times a month from all over the country. Might have been once a week sometimes, but 3 times a month. 42 bind units or 42 seats, somewhat less than that in bind units on every flight. And if we ever missed one, meaning they went home with the check still in their pocket, I don't remember it. I could pass a lie detector test that everybody who went through that process on the plane joined for either 20 in today's money, either 25,000 or 50,000. It was a closing machine. I don't expect you to run out and buy a
Seriously, no, but they were genuinely pre-qualified and they knew it.
oh, sure. Go, we don't have to wonder if you have the money, it's in your
Right.
pocket.
Right. You've already made that commitment. So, you're more than halfway there.
So anyway, that was Bob, that's what the closing machine was. And you're right. I frankly had forgotten it, but that's the first time I met you was when you arrived on it. And he went on to be a vice president of the company. He was in Minneapolis. And one day, when I got exiled to Canada to turn Holiday Magic Canada around, I was in Toronto, and I was talking to him about something one day by chance, and I was moaning about the cold. And he said, Ben, do you still have that big map behind your desk that you always have? And I said, yeah, it's here. And he said, well, look where Minneapolis is and look where Toronto is. So I did. And I said, oh, I didn't realize that. Uh, Toronto was further south than Minneapolis, as best I recall. And he said, "So stop whining." I said, "I'm sorry. It never dawned on me you were in as cold or colder weather." And then we have a question from Susan Foster, an old friend of mine. And she said, "You haven't covered the types of customers." And suddenly it dawned on me, as sales infiltration is the most popular part of Closers Part 2 and the best part, in Part 1, the one that gets most of the activity or comments and questions and so on is a section we did, starts on page 35 in the Closers Part 1 on the types of customers. And here's the point. Old people, and these are general sweeping comments. There are, of course, exceptions, but older people buy differently than younger people. Females buy differently than males. Uh, Doctors buy differently than our fellow salespeople. CPAs buy different than whatever. The middle-aged customer buys differently. There's a section in here called the black customer on page 46 that today, if I wrote it or edited it, and I can't disavow it totally because I rewrote the whole book and edited it, but I frankly would have made it a little gentler. But one time when called down in front of a group, we were covering the black customer, somebody said, "That's racist." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I didn't think it was." And another guy stood up, a black guy stood up, and he said, "It may be racist, but it's true, because it talks about a person, presumably a white person, going into a black home and in a direct sales context, and how they are treated, how they should be treating the customer, and back and forth." And so where I cringe because I sort of thought he had me on a technicality, the black customer said, "Yeah, that's right. Maybe racist, maybe shouldn't have written it that way, but it's true." And it goes on to the Hispanic customer, the Jewish customer, the Asian customer. I just saw something that made me cringe on page 47. It doesn't say Asian customer, it says Oriental customer. But forgive me, this
Difference. I
book
don't
is,
understand.
or Asian is the preferred way now.
Oh, okay. I can't
Orient,
keep up.
yeah, I'm with you. Oriental has fallen out of favor, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
So anyway, and then it goes into accountants, airline pilots, bankers, barber stylists, and so on. A friend of mine, here's an example to personalize it. A friend of mine who used to work with me was a salesperson selling distributorships to people. And she was trying to sell her brother, who was a fireman. And it was not only a distributorship, it was an investment in the company, on which she got a commission like a stockbroker. And she said, "I just can't close him." I said, "Well, maybe he's not interested. Maybe he doesn't have the money." She said, "No, he's got the money. I can confirm that. And he's fascinated with what we do, but I just can't close him." I said, "Have you looked him up in the book?" He says, "Well, no, what book?" And I said, "We've discovered you haven't read the Closers Part 1 that you're allegedly selling. Because if you had, you would have come across firemen on page 52, and you would have discovered how they like to be treated and what they want to talk about and so on." She said, "Really?" She flipped through the book, it's only a paragraph and a half, 2 paragraphs, a short one, on firemen. She read it, called him back, and closed him for a significant amount of money. I don't remember exactly what it was, but tens of thousands of dollars in the dollars of those days. So here's the real lesson. I'm not going to try and teach you how to sell firemen or accountants or anybody else, but the thing she learned, and that people who are reading that book need to learn, is when you meet the customer in their office, male or female, in their home, with or without their kids, with or without their dogs and pets, with or without family pictures, uh, hanging around and so on. You start categorizing who you're talking to in generalities. There are accountants who are really funny, fun loving people. I've never met one, but I'm
Nope.
confident.
Nope.
Yeah,
Never
I'm,
happened.
I'm confident they exist somewhere. But you ought to really go to the book and discover a little something about accountants. Mainly what you need to do is when you're talking to someone is remember, oh, this person fits in several categories.
You
They're
about that. You
yeah,
have to take I think, the big picture, the overview, and then start saying, okay, he's an accountant or he's a fireman, but he does have a dog. Okay. And you start finding some points of interest right away.
exactly. And look for the more what I call the Mormon picture. That's the family picture with a husband and wife and 38 kids or grandkids or what have
Yeah.
you.
And they're all
And,
blonde. Every
yeah,
one
they're
of
all
them.
blonde and they all got
Yeah,
white shirts on.
they
So
do.
I was kidding with a guy the other day, but he sent me, we were talking on the computer and or talking on the phone, and then on the computer, he sent me a picture of his family who I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen some of them ever, and most of them I hadn't seen since they grew up physically. We haven't been together in many years. And I said, I didn't know you were Mormon. And I was kidding because I didn't think he was. And he said, no, we're just sexually active. So he said, actually, we're Baptists. Well, I said, I'm proud of you.
That's kind of the same thing in some ways.
Yeah.
At least where I am, Southern Baptist down here, they've got kids.
Yeah. Well,
Lots of them.
if somebody has a picture up of 30 people, and this picture literally had 30 people in it, and one of his daughters was noticed. I knew she was pregnant anyway, was noticeably pregnant when the picture was taken. The child since been born. So except for that, unborn at that moment, there were
Right.
31 people in the picture. So we're talking to a family person.
No kidding. And they
Yeah,
all like each other enough to stand next to each other for a photograph.
yeah, yeah.
That's not all that common, I gotta
No
say.
blood on any of the shirts.
Right, right. No fence clench it, no, fists that are clenched at their sides, and nobody's got a pie to the face. No, that was a family reunion. I'm thinking back. Okay, keep going.
Well, let's just do quick three. One would be male or female. You meet somebody, male or female. If it's a mixed group, then it's a mixed group. That's a whole different category. But male or female, black, white, or what, light tan, whatever. That's another one. Accountants or firemen or whatever. There's all sorts of ways to break it down and just test the waters and reach out. It turned out firemen, and they like praise. They like to be heroes. That's sort of their self-image. When she zeroed in on that, the reluctant brother investor crumbled instantly and joined. He didn't even know he'd been had. But what he'd been had by was his ego. Oh, somebody in the family is finally paying attention to the fact that by day, I'm a hero in the San Francisco Fire Department. And finally, someone is going, "Ooh, I didn't know that. Tell me about your most recent uh, exploit or whatever." And as soon as we got into him instead of into the investment, he flipped. And
Self
then,
in there, I guess.
yeah,
He just
and
he couldn't make himself part of the picture.
I guess,
Okay.
but no one had, and I don't mean this in a sleazy way, but no one had stroked him properly. He, she said, looking back, I'm not sure that other than saying my brother's a fireman, I ever made a big deal out of it. He was putting his life on the line, sometimes two, three times a day, 5, 6 days a week in San Francisco. Uh, and I treated it like he was selling shoes at pay Payless or whatever.
Right. And that
And
is a big deal. These
of
guys,
course it is. Yeah.
they do put their lives out there for us.
as they're always talking about with 9/11 and police and so on. There are people who run from danger, and there are people who run toward danger. And I always make sure, I bought a lot of fireman lunches and police lunches and so on when we go into a restaurant and they're in uniform and identifiable. We just quietly pick up the check, as a way, and sometimes the waitress turns us in, even though he or she, the server, even though he or she was asked not to, they'll come over and say, "Thank you very much." I said, "You're not supposed to know." I said, "Well, we do, and
Uh,
thank you very much." They appreciate being noticed. I
of
saw a guy
course.
in a restaurant the other day, and he had on a retired, I think it was Marine retired service cap, either World War II or Korea. I think probably Korea. He wasn't old enough for World War II. And I said, I have a desire to order one of those hats for my service in the Coast Guard on the Cuban patrol. But I just didn't know, do you get a lot of attention with it? And he laughed. He said, "Well, I haven't bought a drink with it on." So when he goes into restaurants, and we were in a restaurant, so when he's not wearing it because he doesn't want to be noticed. It's, "Hello, I am a retired Marine and I'm proud of it." And so that's the reason he has it on, and it has benefits. Haven't bought a drink since yes, anytime I've ever put it on.
Well, and let me ask you this, at that age, one would assume that he knows better than to wear a hat indoors.
This
That's no
generation
longer a
doesn't know
rule
that.
anymore, but
No, no,
we
not
were
with
taught that.
baseball.
Yeah, baseball caps.
Yeah, you
I
come
should
in.
talk. When I'm outside, I've got a baseball cap on with my giant Ray-Bans and my resting bitch face. I'm ready to go. So,
Coach Bear Bryant was known for that houndstooth checkered hat he wore everywhere. And one day he walked onto the field with his team and he didn't have the hat on. And somebody said, "Coach Bryant, where's the hat?" And he pointed up to the sky, except it wasn't a sky, it was a roof. He was playing for the first time in a domed stadium. And he said, "My mama told me not to wear a hat indoors."
I heard that all of my life, even still. You're not supposed to wear a hat. Of course, things have changed, but if you're wearing a regular hat, take it off. Don't sit at the table with it. It's just rude.
Yeah. However, when and if I get my Coast Guard hat, I'm going to wear it until I get my first beer. Then I'll take it. All right. Now I'm going to be polite now that I got a beer out of the deal.
Yeah, I'm all happy. I'll never do it again.
And then one from you, not a question, but one from you. You reminded me of it. You said talking about people wanting to pick your brain, and I have a cute little phrase I use. I said, "I'd like to pick your brain." I said, "Well, we'll do that right after we pick your credit card, because I'm not going to just sit around and answer goofball questions because you're
Yeah,
curious,
right,
and
right.
you wouldn't treat the answers properly anyway." So anyway, when someone wants to pick your brain, say, "Sure, let's pick your credit card and we'll get into that." Uh,
Should try that.
and
Last week was bad for that. I must have gotten four in one day, and I thought this is unusual, but only one of them went to the trouble to say who he was, what he wanted, and even that really wasn't sufficient. I had to, engage with him to say, what is it that you want from me? And I had to pull it out. By then I was curious enough. The other three, I was just, no, thank you.
yeah,
They didn't
okay.
give me any information that made me even want to have a conversation with them.
And they want to avoid a situation which sounds so official, you might charge them for it. So I've told you I got into the coaching business by Gigi, who sits about 15 feet away from me when she's in the office running her jewelry business. And I got off the phone with a long, involved helping people thing, which I've done instinctively my entire adult life since I had something to coach them about, which started when I was about 23 and started making some serious money. And she said something to the effect of, "Why do you spend so much time and you don't charge for it?" And I said, "Well, I enjoy these conversations. She said, well, you said that something for nothing is worth nothing, so they're probably not paying a whole lot of attention to you anyway. But let me suggest you charge for this by the hour, by the minute, by the call, something. Charge for it, and because something for nothing's worth nothing, and we'll see where your real friends are. Well, it was really interesting. That afternoon, I started charging for calls. I didn't call it coaching or mentoring yet, but I started charging for it, not unlike the way Dr. Hill had charged me many years before. About half of them, Denise, went away. Let's say there were 30 people, and I want to pick your brain full. Half of them went away as soon as they heard they had to pay for it. And the other half, and there's rotation among them, but the other half started paying strict attention. I could tell they'd say, wait a minute, I'm still writing that down. I hadn't heard that before. We were just chatting before.
Right.
And then I started hearing results. I did what you said. My sales went up 30%. The gentleman who asked about pardon me, I had Bob Runner on my mind, Susan Foster, who talked about types of customers, said that 30 some odd years ago, she was directed to the types of customers in the book, and her income doubled immediately and has stayed high all these years because she finally understood a big part of the game that she didn't understand before. Now, with the questions, we've used up a whole lot of time. Let me get real quick onto page 258 before page 259. And the reason is there it describes in one paragraph, top paragraph almost, after a little partial paragraph before that, first, what the word infiltrate means. Sales infiltration, maybe I should have named it something else a little less sophisticated and subtle. But what infiltrate means, right from the dictionary, to cause as a liquid, that's in parentheses, to cause as a liquid, to permeate something by penetrating its pores, to pass through or into a substance by filtering or permeating, to pass troops singly or in small groups through gaps in the enemy line, to enter and become established in gradually and unobtrusively. And then it says for subversive purposes. That's not the reason we're teaching it, but that's the dictionary definition. My point being, you got to understand the word infiltrate as to understand sales infiltration. What I am very good at, and almost all the top professional salespeople I know are very good at, and Jimmy Rucker, the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, my running buddy from high school and on to this day, he was in the Coast Guard, and if I ever order my hat, I'm going to get him one too. I alluded to that one day. I told him what we were going to put on it because we were both on the Cuba patrol. He says, hurry up. I'll wear it at my funeral if nothing else. So uh, what what they and I all understood was you infiltrated by getting inside of the company, the person, the family, whatever the unit is you're selling. And part of that is looking for the picture of the kids. Part of it's petting the dog. I started off doing in-home sales, so I'm sort of mentally still geared for that, although I don't do it anymore. But petting the dog will carry you a long way. When they say, "Oh, this can get hair on you," I don't care. I love dogs. That that gets you closer to the close right there than some tricky close would after you've let the dog drool on you and so on. And when I was going house to house, for lack of a better word, meeting people in their homes, I always had to change clothes on a hanger in the car in case a Saint Bernard or something like that got me. I could clean up and get on with my day. But those are the things you look for. One of the magic words in sales infiltration is we. I don't talk about them and us when I'm dealing with a prospect, uh, even an established customer. It's always we. What do we do when this happens? What do we think about this? And what I'm really doing with the word we is I'm getting in. I'm not, what do you do about this? That means I'm a part of a different team. I'm on your team. What do we do? What do we think? What are we going to do? And so on. And rather quickly, good sales infiltrators are invited to uh, family weddings, family gatherings, picnics, funerals, and so on, because you become part of the family. And the fact you have perhaps somewhat of an ulterior motive, you're also a salesperson. I don't even let them forget that. When I'm getting close to the close, I talk openly about, I'm going to get your defenses up. I'm about to ask for the order. And they laugh and I laugh because we're family and we can laugh about stuff like that. So sales infiltration is not just a cute phrase. It's a living, breathing thing. And once you get the concept down and start acting like it and understanding that you are infiltrating them, their family, their company, their defenses, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. And it's a very difficult thing to explain. I think it's one of the reasons I've laughed about it, that Jimmy Rucker was the greatest salesperson I ever personally worked with. He was not a good sales trainer, because Jimmy's idea of sales training was watch what I do and do that, because it came
I'm
so,
guilty of that too. It's like, just do what I do.
yeah, well, that's fine, but it
But it
doesn't
doesn't
work.
work. It doesn't. I figured that out the hard. But Ben, while you're talking, I've been writing two words over and over and over again because they're important. And especially talking about sales infiltration, number one of them is observation.
Yes,
Observation is a highly honed skill, and you either have it or you don't, but you can learn it. And the other is you're talking about we. Ben, I've been doing that forever. When I'm talking with somebody, I'm consulting with somebody about a website or, if they want to become a mentor of mine for podcasting, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this. It's well, what can we do? What do you want to do? What do you want to know from us working together? It's never me against them, ever.
yep.
But I've always done that. It was instinct until I met you and went, oh, I'm smarter than I thought I was.
Rucker has been to some sales trainings years ago that I conducted, and he was in the audience, although he was a better salesperson than I was. And I would explain some concept like that. And he says, I got to start doing that. And I said, you're already doing it. That's where I got it. Oh, he said,
I
oh,
learned it from you.
yeah. He said, really? I didn't know I had a name. I said, I had to make up a name, Jimmy. It's what you do. It's who you are. Do you remember the old story about Queen Elizabeth or Princess Elizabeth at the time? She and her husband went on a trip, and and among the places was, I think it was called Big Tops. William Holden, the actor, owned it, and it was a resort built up in the trees somewhere in Africa, I guess. And so it was called treetops. That's what it was. You went there and you went up to your room. You climbed up the steps and went to your room, and then the room, some of the rooms were connected. You didn't have to go back down the tree to get over to a neighbor's room. There was ways to do that. It was just a unique, fancy way to go. Well, she went there, and the saying is, she went up the tree as a princess, came down as a queen,
Right, that's when
because
her father died.
her father died
Right.
while she was up in the tree. And so anyway, I always think of that one. You remember the song "Do You Love Me Now That I Can Dance"?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's a little. You'd know it in two beats if you heard it. But do you love me? Uh,
Ah,
I can do the pony. I can do the twist. I can do.
I'm gonna have to go to YouTube.
Yeah, do it. You'll love the song. Anyway, in our little team, when Rucker and I were in high school, and then we went into college and pledged the same fraternity together. You need a breakthrough moment, is the point of this story. Uh, I was the ringleader. I was the guy who, was first and funniest and this and that. And Jimmy, he hated the term, but Jimmy was my road dog and my running buddy, and we were almost inseparable, but I was the star. We go to a fraternity party. Think of now Queen Elizabeth going up the tree. We go to a fraternity party at the American Legion Hall in Avondale, Georgia, just outside part of Atlanta, really. And the star of our little team, me, goes to the bathroom. Went in the right off the ballroom or the big room. I went into the bathroom as the star. I came out a few minutes later, and there was a crowd standing around like they do around a fight, when boys used to get in fight in high school and everybody stands around because they want to see them fight. They don't want to fight, but it was a crowd like that. I thought a fight had broken out and they're yelling and screaming and everything. And so I look around because I want to make sure Rucker's not in the fight. And then I see Rucker's face, but no one seems to be hitting him. So I get a better view, and on the record player or whatever was playing very loud, "Do You Love Me Now That I Can Dance?" And in that song, every dance of the era is mentioned and the beat changes. So if it's the twist and you care, you stop doing what you were doing, you do the twist, and then you
Oh
do,
no.
yeah, and then you do the pony and so and so. Well, Rucker had 7 sisters. I didn't know when I wasn't around, they were busy teaching him how to dance. So as I finally get a good view, this big crowd that's in a circle looking at something is looking at Rucker by himself. He wasn't fighting anybody. He was dancing to "Do You Love Me?" And he was doing the pony and the twist and the this and the boogaloo or whatever is in the song. And they were screaming, yelling. So I went in the bathroom, the star. I came out of the bathroom, the road dog. Rucker had swapped places. He was now the
Shame on
star.
Rucker.
And I said,
And when you're thinking, "Do you love me?" I instantly went to Meatloaf, which is an entire different song, a different genre. Meatloaf, "Do You Love Me?" It's hysterical.
well, you look it up. I forget who sang it, maybe Wilson Pickett or somebody like that. But
I'll
"Do
have to
You
go look
Love
it
Me
up.
Now
Yeah,
That I Can Dance?"
now that I
And,
can
and
dance.
then picture Rucker. And as you go through the song, every dance that comes up, he was doing it like a pro. And so I think I over time sort of got back to his equal. But people would say to me after that moment, they would say to me, "Do you really know Jimmy Rucker?" I said, "What do you mean, do
Oh.
I really know him? He's my road dog." No, I'm talking about the Jimmy Rucker who danced at the party. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
who I'm talking about.
he's my friend.
Rucker and I are close. Ask him.
It
So you
doesn't
need
take
a
but a moment, does it?
no, don't go to the bathroom. I learned you go to a dance, don't go to the bathroom if you're with anybody that you're superior to, because it can go away in an instant.
Oh, that's just
As
wrong on
as
so many levels. We're
uh,
gonna talk.
as the slave was paid to whisper in the emperor's ear, Patton mentioned it, George C. Scott, as Patton mentioned it, when the conquering whatever Grand Poobah returned from the foreign land with the elephants he'd brought that he'd gathered up and the slaves and the this, he always had one person on his chariot whose job it was, he was a slave, to whisper in his ear, "All fame is fleeting." Don't, in other words, don't let the roar of the crowd and the elephants you got fool you. This can all go away. Chuck
Huh.
Colson, Chuck Colson, who worked for Nixon, uh, was they said he would drive over his grandmother for Nixon. Uh, Went to prison, got out. In prison, he became a born again Christian and so on, and then went into the ministry very successfully. First time out of prison with a big crowd, 4 or 5 thousand people. He was well known, but not as a minister. He was well known as Nixon's hitman. So he goes to the lectern and the crowd stands and roars. And a good friend of his came up who was on the podium with him, came up behind him, put his hand on his shoulder and says, Chuck, be careful. The devil's on your back now. Don't let the roar of the crowd get to you, in other words.
Right.
So if you're going to be a sales infiltrator, you probably need a breakthrough moment, not only in life, but with each individual person you meet. And that breakthrough moment is when you break into their family, corporate family, personal family, whatever family, and become one of them by infiltration. Crucial. And if you can master that by practicing, and the rest of that chapter goes on and explains it in detail, I encourage you to start reading it from the beginning, page 257 in the closers part 2. If you can master that, sales changes. It's like a different dimension. I was listening to some pro golfer the other day who played with Tiger Woods somewhere, and he said he was kidding. And he said, and this is early in Tiger's career, he said he was laughing and joking. I knew he was a good golfer, but he was kidding with the caddies. He was signing autographs as we walked along. And then he was in contention to win the tournament. He had 5 holes to go. And he said, I looked over and said something to him. And the tiger who'd been there for the previous 3.5 days was gone. The tiger who came to win a golf tournament was there. He said he became an entirely different human. No laughing, no joking, no nothing except staring ahead for where his ball either was or he was going to make it go. He became a different human. And top salespeople, sales infiltrators, master closers know how to cross over that line and become a different person. And with that, I'm through lecturing.
No, and I'm glad you said that because I've read a lot about Tiger Wood. I don't know why I don't know anything about golf except how to golf clap when I'm being sarcastic or sardonic, take your pick. But it's but I really know nothing about any sports, but I like to watch a lot of these athletes because in many, many ways they have mastered so much about the human perception, if you will,
Right.
that we
Yep.
never will. And I remember reading some years ago that Tiger Woods spends a lot of time in his own imagination and he will
Mhm.
practice and he may be on the course with a real golf course, but in his head he is mastering that swing over and over and over again. And I think that's, kind of what you're talking about when we are doing our sales presentation or speaking with somebody, we know when it's time to switch it off and say, this is what I know, this is how I close, and go from there.
Right. Absolutely correct. It was said of Jack Nicklaus, but on that subject, somebody said to a fellow pro, uh, what do you think of the way Nicklaus plays golf? He said, Nicklaus doesn't play golf. We play golf. He plays something else. And
And
that
I've
was,
heard that over and over again. My
yeah,
friend Jim Tunney, the NFL Jim
uh-huh,
Tunney, passed not so long ago, and he told me the best stories about all the hundreds and hundreds of people that he knew over the years. And he was talking about James Garner, who was on the golf course with him quite a bit. And he said, and he would have to warn people, don't talk to him when he's golfing. Just don't. He's the nicest guy in the world, but if you get in his way or if you interrupt him, you're not going to like what happens.
Gary Player had a moment like that, probably several, but the guy telling the story was the guy who got uh, punched in the face verbally, not literally, but they became buddies. They hung out in the pro shop and in the bar or wherever they were prone to go. And he and Gary Player became buddies, he thought. And they were. But now they're on the course, but he's behind the ropes. He's a spectator, a club member. He wasn't a pro. And Gary Player comes down and he's walking along, and the guy leans over the ropes and says, Gary, how are you? And And Gary, he said, it gave me a stare that would have killed a normal person. He said, not now. I'm working.
Right. And that's the way it has to be sometimes. You have to know where your limits are and where you're going to allow people to break your concentration or
Right.
whatever it is that's in your head. You've got to have that mental wall up and do your work. And I love this story. Where can our audience buy the closer's books? Because, this is a master class that we're presenting. We're not going paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence. We're teaching people what what you've done for so, so, so long, and the little bit that I've learned from you over the years. So where can they study along with us as we present this master class each week?
Well, if they're following the master class, they need the books. It's like if you're in church, you need the hymnal or the prayer book or whatever. So you go to stores, stores dot ebay.com/, this is all one word run together, Ronzoni Books, Ronzone books, BOOKS, of course, stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books. And there you'll find everything in the current selection of the closers, including some cousins of the closers like Sales Closing Power by J. Douglas Edwards and me, etc. And you get great pricing there and free shipping, which is something we don't even offer at my website. But it still will come to you signed, dated, with our unconditional, no questions asked, lifetime money back guarantee. So that's how you get it. And then if you're interested in our mentoring program, just shoot me an email at BFG, that stands for Benjamin Franklin Gay, BFG3, the number three, at DirectCon. I had a moment there where I couldn't remember my email. I've only had it 40 some odd years. BFG3 at DirectCon. That's short for Direct Connect, DirectCon.net. And then on the subject line, put mentoring or coaching or something that tells me why you're writing, and we'll send you written. We're not going to harass you with phone calls. We'll send you written information about how you can join my coaching mentoring program. We call it Mentoring Dynamics, program Dr. Hill and I started and didn't get to finish because he died many years ago. So I brought it back to life. And in there, if you're interested in joining the Closers series of books, put something in the subject line that tells me that's what you're actually writing about, but the same website. So that's how people can reach me.
And what are we going to talk about? We'll be at part 3 of our sales infiltration deep dive. Where do you want to start over there?
Well, let's just pick up right where we were, page 259 in the Closers part 2, and we'll just run on. I'll highlight some things in the meantime, and we'll go as far as we can go.
Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for being with us every week. Thank you for the terrific questions. And if you have any for Ben or for me, you can reach us on LinkedIn. We are super easy to find. Just connect with us over there. And we will see you next Wednesday. Ben, thank you. I didn't even have to yell at you or threaten to call your wife this time.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm so grateful.
No, you're not. That didn't even sound sincere. I'm telling you, with Ben, sincerity costs extra, just so you know. It just does. So, all right, everybody, thank you. And we will see you next week.